Yes.
So,
Hello.
good morning, Tashu Singh. Just checking, wanted to check your audio.
I'm able to hear you now.
Okay, thank you so much, Tashu.
You are mute. I can't hear you.
Apologies,
Yeah,
Dr. Freiheit.
couldn't hear.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you and welcome you all to the Buddhist Democracy and webinar today. Today, we gather to celebrate Bhutan's remarkable journey towards democracy and explore how citizenship engagement continues to shape its progress. As you know, Bhutan's transition to democracy is relatively recent, presenting both opportunities and challenges. This webinar aims to highlight the importance of citizenship participation in building a resilient and inclusive democracy, showcasing initiatives that empowers people across Bhutan, contributing actively to their communities. So we are honored to have an esteemed list of panelists, including members of Bhutan's National Council, civic leaders, and international allies who support Bhutan's growth in civic space. Our discussion today will not only help us understand Bhutan's democracy progress, but will also foster dialogue on strategies to strengthen civic engagement, ensuring every Bhutanese voice is heard. Thank you all for joining us. We look forward to an insightful conversation that will inspire collaborative efforts and further Bhutan's democratic development. Welcome, and let's begin this journey together. I would now like to invite Tashu Karma Ura for an opening remarks. Before I give the floor to Tashu, Tashu Karma is the president of the Center for Bhutan and GNH Studies since 2008, and Tashu has helped draft Bhutan's first constitution and was honored with the title of Tashu by the fourth king of Bhutan in 2006. Tashu is a prolific author and a scholar of Bhutanese culture. Tashu's work include Bhutan, the Unremembered Nation, and Leadership of the Wise Kings of Bhutan. Tashu is also an accomplished painter whose works are displayed in the Dojila Temple and the British Museum. Tashu has served as a visiting fellow at several institutions, including Oxford University. Tashu, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Tashu.
Thank you very much for that kind and sympathetic introduction. You mentioned in your opening and that this webinar is a renewal of dialogue. And I should say that in democracy, an ecology of good communication is the most fundamental one. You could say that that is really the root on which tree of democracy, flower of democracy, fruit of democracy depends. And there is the ecology of communicating respectfully, truthfully, critically, openly, and in a very sympathetic way to clear the path of all kind of obstacles is the most important one. Receptive, open exchange is the most important one. Having said that, let me also, within my 5 minutes, say that I like to express on behalf of everybody in Bhutan our gratitude to Dr. Clan and Reinhard, Dr. Reinhard, who is, of course, the pillar of the communication of friendship and solidarity between Bhutan and Germany. And in particular, through his mobilization, I assume I like to thank also the foundation, Friedrich-Naumann, for such a critical input today in bringing so many participants together. I should then, of course, thank very much the contributions and in the role of speakers of parliamentary expert Dr. Sange Khandu, our environmental specialist Karma Dukchen, Dean Dr. Chencho Lhamu, editor Kile Sering, and MP Dr. Lhamu, and many others, including guest speaker, of course, I already mentioned, and Dr. Reinhardt. In some accidental or by design, perhaps more by design, the group of speakers really represent the best possible spectrum who have a legitimate role and had made contribution in civic engagement and civic society. From my humble observation, regionally and globally, the advocacy of civic engagement has been sharpened really by 4 different types of committed people. And one of them, of course, is the civil society of various shades coming together and forging difficult paths, whether it is on climate or environment, gender, or poverty, and so forth. Civil society. Other one I would like to say as a subset of civil society is the indigenous people's movement. They have found finally voice in this century after a huge kind of marginalization for so long. The 2 other one, quite predictable one, and one is the sort of commitment and principled stand of academics and researchers, especially in the humanities, and lastly, of course, it is outstanding work of journalists around the world. If you look, they have been able to break walls and forge paths because of this. And in some ways, our speakers panel also reflect and represent all these 4 categories in some ways, except indigenous people. But that is because we don't have a big group here anyway, except Monpas and others, if you like to classify them as such. Now, you mentioned community in the way of opening the conference, but that is what is the terminology used in conceptualization and measurement of GNH. Community is roughly equivalent to the civil society or civic engagement in your language. And that is how it was understood in the past in Bhutan. I mean, not through registration or formalization, but through sheer force of history and existence as communities, as opposed to government and the state. So that is why your work today, your dialogue today, is also a great resonance and support to this community vitality aspect of the gross national happiness. And community is to be defined, for example, by a great emphasis on customs rather than singular order of the law that is applied throughout uniformly, irrespective of the conditions. But customs is very much customary practices are very much closer and intimate with the existence of community in the past. The sociality or mutuality of the people that is forged together also by the sense of community, by place and time, is also a important aspect. And of course, the existence of commons, common property, common social forms, common facilities, which is open to access of all the members, is another feature. So I suppose in some ways your work will circle back to these fundamental points. And because of the existence of community spirit, the sense of belonging and the sense or the lack of alienation and sense of intimacy and connection, which is a fundamental drive in Bhutanese, fundamental drive in GNH, emphasize, as well as fundamental drive amongst human beings, is an important aspect of your work today. I also hope to conclude that GNH highlights good governance. And in there, you will find all the normal components which is emphasized in a liberal democracy, such as rights, such as inequality, such as freedoms, such as delivery of equal services, irrespective of demographic brackets and so on and so forth. And this all contribute at the end to the trustworthiness of governance. And in all governance, there is always two wings. One is the civil society and one is the state. And I hope that your work will always promote much better reconciliation, connections, and partnership between these two aspects of society. Thank you very much. And I wish all of you very fruitful, very stimulating and impetus towards the great change brought to, radical change brought to our nation by the fourth king of Bhutan via introduction of GNH, constitution, and so forth. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karma. It is always an inspiration hearing from you, La. May I now invite Mr. Reinhard Wolf before I give the floor. So Mr. Wolf is the president of the Bhutan German Himalaya Kajal Staff or Association and holds a Master in Forest. Mr. Wolf is a very long-time ally of Bhutan and a beloved friend. So Mr. Wolf has spent 10 years in Africa and 5 years in Bhutan, leading sustainable resource management projects. So from 2002 until retiring in 2020, Mr. Wolf managed conservative initiatives in Asia, focusing on forests, climate change, and international climate policy. So since 2015, Mr. Wolf has been leading the German Bhutan Himalaya Society, fostering mutual understanding and supporting Bhutan's cultural heritage through events and activities. Mr. Wolf, you have the floor now.
Thank you very much, Tashi. And thank you and a big Kadrinchela to the Bhutan Media Foundation and the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for having us, the German Bhutan Himalaya Society, as a co-host of this highly interesting and relevant event. So also thank you to Dasho Karma-Ura for his inspiring address. So I hope mine is a bit complementary. So regarding the topic, citizen participation and engagement in Bhutan, I would like to start with some figures from Germany on civil society organizations. So as of 2021, Germany has 620,000 CSOs and with 50 million members. And then some 25 million people who do voluntary work with these CSOs. And 90% of all events in the sport, art, social, musical, educational fields are organized by CSOs in cooperation with municipalities and cities. And these volunteers generate a monetary share of 4.6% of the GDP, gross domestic product, with their work, which is largely unpaid. And that's why Dasho Karma-Ura also mentioned it. This sector is often referred to as, well, the third sector alongside the state, which is the first, and the private sector, which is the second sector. And of course, this sector is to be distinguished from the tertiary sector, from the economic terminology, which defines the service sector of an economy. And now one of these 620,000 registered CSOs in Germany is our society, the German Bhutan Himalaya Society. We are voluntary, non-profit. The board or any other members are usually not paid, just the opposite. They spend their own money to do the work sometimes. And we charge a modest membership fee of 50 euro per year, but there are other CSOs which do not charge a fee and some which charge a much higher fee. So now let me just, with my, limited knowledge, compare this to Bhutan. To the best of my knowledge, Bhutan has some 50 plus registered CSOs. And compared to 620,000 registered CSOs in Germany. This means that in relation to the population size, Germany has, with about 84 million people, 10 times more registered CSOs per capita than Bhutan. But I assume that there are many traditional voluntary groups in Bhutan which are not registered. And as far as I know, the history of CSO in Bhutan is quite young, while it goes back for centuries in Germany. And just as a side remark, I know that there has been a discussion on the endowment fund in Bhutan, which is, I think, compulsory for CSOs. This is, we don't have in Germany. There is no condition to have an endowment fund. And well, when I first thought about the topic of this webinar, citizen participation and engagement in Bhutan, I remembered this famous sentence of the former US President John F. Kennedy. He said in his inaugural address on January 20th, 1961, it was, by the way, the first delivered TV audience in color, and considered one of the best presidential inaugural speeches in American history. So immediately after reciting the oath of office, President Kennedy turned to address the crowd gathered at the Capitol and said, "And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." And I think this short and famous sentence is reflecting very much the spirit of citizen participation and engagement all over the world, and I assume also in Bhutan. So coming back again to Bhutan, the Ministry of Education and Skills Development has recently announced a revised curriculum on a national education policy 2024 that focus on mindfulness and well-being. And I quote from an article from Künzel, the initiative aims to align Bhutan's educational standards with the needs of the society in the evolving times. The education minister highlighted that these reforms reflect the Royal Kasho's vision for an education system that nurture both academic excellence and holistic well-being. And further, this change will focus on integrating emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and compassion among students, supporting the goals of promoting cross-national happiness and addressing students' mental health. The focus of the green education will aim to instill a sense of responsibility for environmental conservation. Further, the curriculum will encompass Bhutanese cultural heritage and civic education to foster national identity and encourage community engagement. End of quote. So with these humble remarks, I would like to end and look forward for an inspiring and fruitful webinar with really highly experienced panelists. Thank you and Tashidele.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wolf. It's always a pleasure hearing from you. For the last remark, I would like to share my screen. Give me a second. Where is it? Okay. For the final remark, we have the Honorable Member of Parliament, Maurice Corner. So Maurice Corner has been serving as a member of the European Parliament for the Free Democratic Party since 2019 and has chaired the FDP delegation since 2003. Within the European Parliament, Mr. Corner is an active member of the Committee on Civil Liberties, Home Affairs and Justice, and the Committee on Budget. So additionally, Mr. Corner serves as the Vice Chairman of the Committee on Inquiry Mr. Coroner is dedicated to advancing the future of Europe, advocating for a fair and generationally balanced budget, safeguarding civil rights, and upholding the European values across all member states. Because of the current ongoing situations in Germany, Mr. Coroner has sent us a video message. I will share it right now.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Give me a second. Let me just, Mr. Moritz Corner from the European Parliament.
areas whose voices are essential in shaping our future. Bhutan's commitment to civic engagement is impressive.
Apologies for the technical glitch. Let me. We will. So sorry for the delay. We will try the video once again.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to speak to you today about the unique partnership between Europe and Bhutan. This relationship is built on shared values and a common vision for democratic development and sustainable progress. Germany has been a strong supporter of Bhutan's development over the years, and I'm proud to see our cooperation grow through exchanges like this one. Since its transition to democracy in 2008, Bhutan has shown the world that it's possible to blend modern democratic principles with traditional values. The idea of gross national happiness is a powerful example of this, putting the well-being of citizens on the core of governance. This focus on holistic development is something we in Europe admire and share in our own approach. A healthy democracy lies on strong citizens' engagement. In both Europe and Bhutan, we've seen how active participation from citizens makes our democracy stronger and more resilient. This is essential for young people and communities in rural areas whose voices are essential in shaping our future. Bhutan's commitment to civic engagement is impressive, and I believe we have much to learn from one another in this regard. Looking forward, the European Union is committed to supporting Bhutan on its democratic journey. This webinar is a great example of how we can exchange knowledge and ideas using digital platforms that open new opportunities for citizens' engagement. These tools help us across borders and bring more voices into the conversation. As a German representative, I'm reminded of our own past democracy, especially after 1989. We know that building a strong democracy takes time and effort, but it is always worth it. European Union, as the largest democratic project in the world, is dedicated to promoting democratic values globally, and Bhutan is a valued partner in our shared mission. Together, we can explore areas like digital democracy, youth participation, and strengthening civil society. I want to reaffirm that the EU stands by Bhutan as a trusted partner on this journey. I'm optimistic about our future cooperation and confident that by working together, we can achieve even greater progress in building inclusive, citizen-centered governance. Bhutan's unique approach offers valuable lessons for Europe, just as our experience can provide insights for Bhutan. Thank you, and I look forward to what we can achieve together.
Thank you so much, Mr. Corner. My sincere apologies for the glitch and the technical issue. We have another video on Bhutan's democracy, but since we are constrained of time, I would recommend please follow us on YouTube. The videos are available on our YouTube channel. For all the audiences on the Zoom here today, please follow us on our social media channel. We are on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, as well as YouTube. Please do not forget to like us and share our content. And if you have any feedbacks, to send it over. I would now like to hand it over to Honorable Tashin Khandu. He is a former member of parliament with the National Council, and Tasho is a parliamentary expert in Bhutan. Tasho, you have the floor now.
Kuzuzambo to everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the earlier speakers and FNF for this opportunity. Without wasting too much time, Dashu Karmaura had set the tone as we spoke about the GNH, Bhutan's democratic journey. But I want to pick up from what he's talked about, a sense of belonging. So maybe this is something to just to give a context to whatever discussions follow hereafter. So Bhutan today has one of the largest volunteer bodies called Desung, which has about 49,000 Bhutanese doing various development projects and helping communities across the country. And this International Volunteers Day, this body would be able to share more about the activities it does and the development projects. So with that, let me take the opportunity to introduce to you our panelists for today. Honorable Chencho Lhamu. She is one of the 3 women representatives in the Parliament of Bhutan today. In the National Council itself, there are 2 women representatives. There is one eminent member of Parliament who is appointed by His Majesty the King. And Honorable Tsering is the elected member in the National Council from Shemgong Dzongkhak in central Bhutan. She is also a member of the Economic Affairs Committee, and she plays an important role because she is one of the 3 women representatives in the Parliament of Bhutan today. May I now ask Honorable Tsering to make a presentation. Honorable Tsering, just a housekeeping rule. We will have about 5 to 7 minutes for your presentation, and then we'll go into discussions now. Honorable Tsering, you're muted. Sorry, you're muted.
Lasla. Thank you so much, Latash Sangi. First of all, I would like to express my sincere apologies for not being able to join the webinar on time for the delay, because I was actually attending a meeting with the Ministry of Education and Skills Development to discuss on the education-related legislation, which is going to be presented in the upcoming session. My sincere apologies for that, and for also having missed the opening remark by Dr. Carsten. It is a privilege and a great honor for me to participate on this webinar along with Dr. Karmura and the other esteemed panelists and the guest speakers as we delve today into this very important subject of evolving the role of our citizens in a democratic nation. To me, the importance of citizenship engagement in Bhutan, I should say, was felt and empowered to the people since the early 1950s by His Majesty the Third Drugalpo. And for everybody's information here, I would like to inform that I would in fact like to share more on the legislative perspective. So as shared earlier, when it comes to the citizenship engagement and participation in Bhutan, as I said, it was empowered since His Majesty the Third Drugalpo with the establishment of the National Assembly in 1953, followed by Lode Sogde, the Royal Advisory Council in 1963, which started to function only in the year 1965 with its members, even as the Royal Advisory Body to His Majesty the King, and also to serve as the concurrent members of the National Assembly. And this was further followed by the establishment of the Zonka Gerge Sogdu in the year 1981 and GYT Geokerge Sokchung in the year 1991, and the devolution of power introduced by His Majesty the Fourth Drugalpo. So these are basically the series of the empowerment being given to the people of our country to promote this citizen participation and engagement directly from the Golden Throne. And furthermore, we know with the introduction of democratic constitutional monarchy since July 18th, 2008, with the signing of the Constitution of the Kingdom of Bhutan, the people's participation from all demographics have been constitutionally granted to more than 700,000 people of our country. Citizenship engagement, when we talk about this very subject, to me, this is one of the most important fundamental pillar of any democratic system. In a democratic system, citizenship engagement and participation is not just an option. We shouldn't just take it as an option, but this should be treated as the very foundation that upholds our shared values and ambitions as a nation. In Bhutan, as many of us are well aware, the value of community, cooperation, and respect have deep roots. We treat this as both a right and a responsibility. Hence, our citizens are involved not only in choosing their representatives at the local government and the parliament, but in shaping policies, addressing local issues, and contributing to our national discourse through various channels, whether directly or indirectly. A thriving democracy relies on two-way relationship. Number one, where the voices of our people are heard and valued, which is very important. Number two, where our institutions serve these voices in action. However, we do have to consider both the strength and the opportunities for growth in how we foster, encourage, and integrate citizen participation across all levels of governance. So I look forward to our discussion hereafter.
Thank you, Honorable Sri. You mentioned integrating voices of the people and how it's the fundamental pillar to a democratic society. We'll come back to discuss that more. But for now, thank you so much, Honorable Siri. And in our next speaker, we have Kilit Sering. Kilit Sering is with the Quinsel. Almost he's been an entrepreneur who's been responsible leading the creative team for Bhutan's first OTT platform in the country. He is now the managing editor of Quinsel Corporation, Bhutan's oldest newspaper. He has been a journalist for a very long time, and he has witnessed Bhutan's transition to democracy, and therefore I request Mr. Kile to make his presentation.
So thank you, Dr. Sange, everyone here present, at this webinar. Thanks for this opportunity. Let me just quickly present the evolution of the media landscape in Bhutan. The Bhutanese media, the modern media, actually started in the 1970s onwards, with especially modern development taking place, the start of the first 5-year plan development in the 1960s. It started with the state-owned media, Quinsel, and the national broadcaster, Bhutan Broadcasting Service. Quinsel began in 1965 as a government circular that was meant only for government officials, and especially internal, sort of a government gazette. Then in 1986, Quinsel started its weekly publication. That was actually when Quinsel became a full-fledged newspaper, a weekly newspaper. And BBS, Bhutan Broadcasting Service, national broadcaster, was started in 1973. In 1992, through a royal edict, both BBS and Quinsel were delinked, from the government. And in 1999, of course, internet and television came to Bhutan. The run-up to the democracy, democratic reforms, that was taking place in 2008, several private newspapers, were started, starting with Bhutan Times in 2006, Bhutan Observer, and then followed by a series of other private newspapers in both English and Dzongkha. So the Bhutanese the media landscape, leapfrogged, from the 1970s, Quinsel, being owned, as a government gazette, then BBS coming, BBS Radio coming, and to the private media landscape. And this was again, and within a decade again, social media came, which I think changed the entire the media ecosystem in the country, how we share information, how we consume information, and most importantly, I think coming to our discussion today, how we engage, civic engagement again. The social media is such a vibrant platform, where all sorts of public discourse takes place, which are some are very critical. Of course, there is a dark side, also of how negative, social media, is, how social media is used, to spread hate and character assassinate, or attack, online attacks, all sorts, also happen, in social media. But the role of media, the mainstream media, I think even now, in the age of social media and social media technologies, I think is also very relevant. Even now, the fundamental thing is the role of mainstream media, in in empowering people through information and providing that vital platform for democratic discourse, civic engagement. I think still there, and more importantly, again now the role of media in the age of social media is also one of how the mainstream media takes on the role of verifying the content on social media. There are all kinds of information out there in social media, and now it has become sort of a responsibility of the mainstream media also to verify fake news in social media, disinformation, misinformation that's being spread in the social media. Before I conclude my statement, I would like to say media, I think the mainstream media, social media included, I think is a very important civic space where democratic discussions and public discourse is taking place in Bhutan. It's a vibrant space. Of course, there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of media literacy, social media literacy and all, but I think as a young democracy, this space provides that vital platform, for people from all walks of life to engage in public discourse. Thank you for now.
Thank you so much, Kile, for taking us through. Apologies, yeah. Thank you so much, Kile, for taking us through Bhutan's gradual changes in the media landscape and now how the changing roles have evolved. You mentioned about how it's a very important civic space for democratic discourse. And before I introduce the next speaker, I think a big chunk of Bhutanese population comprises of the youth. And since you mentioned the role of media in the age of social media and youth being the biggest consumers of social media, the next person I would like to introduce is Dr. Chencho Lhamu. And if you wonder why the connect with the youth, it's because Dr. Chencho has led formally in her role as the leader for Bhutan Centre for Media and Democracy, which is one of the first CSOs in the country that's worked on citizenship, democracy, media literacy, and many, many more. At the moment, Dr. Chencho is at work with the Royal Thimphu College, and she's also an academic and has published several research papers. But without taking too much time, may I invite Dr. Chencho to make your statement? Thank you.
Hello, Kusambola. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where the audience are joining us from. And on a personal note, it is an honor to be sharing this platform with Tasho Karmaura, who is an accomplished scholar and a thinker who is shaping Bhutan's development philosophy and so many policy decisions. And thank you for the introduction. And thank you also to Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for this opportunity again to speak at this forum. So today I'll be basically sharing about an initiative which was carried out at the Bhutan Centre for Media and Democracy, which I headed from 2020 to 2023 for 4 years. As we all know, Bhutan is a young democracy, and having worked with many young people and people at the grassroots and marginalized groups, policymaking is often viewed as an exclusive task of the policymakers in Bhutan. And often our public consultations tend to be top-down and limited to just information sharing. And having worked in the civil society for 7 years, I realized that empowering marginalized groups of people to engage in policy is crucial, but equally important is also in preparing those in positions of authority and power to be open to diverse perspectives. So back in 2022 and 2023, BCMD and the Bhutan Canada Foundation, with funding support from Canada's Fund for Innovation and Transformation, we launched a project called Democracy Beyond Elections. BCMD led the project in Bhutan with support from fellow CSOs like Renew and FENSEN, leveraging on their network to include the vulnerable groups. As the grant for the project was to test an innovative idea, our hypothesis was that a design thinking approach engaging both policymakers and marginalized groups like women, young people, and people with disabilities could make policy development more inclusive and consultative. So we organized a series of interrelated workshops that applied design thinking principles, fostering empathy, co-learning, co-designing, and voicing, solutions to issues, where government officials and vulnerable participants collaboratively addressed social protection related issues of vulnerable groups in the country. The project wasn't easy. It was quite complex, and the complexity was in guiding a diverse group of people through the design thinking phases, while deliberating on social protection issue and reviewing related policy documents of the government. However, in retrospect and based on the evaluation report, which was produced by Bhutan Canada Foundation in consultation with an independent consultant, the results were quite heartening. Because the report pointed out to how positive attitudes towards collaborative policy making increased among both policymakers and marginalized groups who participated in the project. And in addition, confidence in advocacy also grew significantly. 96.5% of the participants from marginalized groups felt empowered to engage with policymakers, up from 65% at the baseline. And what was interesting was also that empathy proved to be an essential ingredient in bridging gaps. All the government officials that the evaluators interviewed spoke of gaining empathy that they previously lacked, given the gap in their knowledge of the lived experiences of the vulnerable people. And similarly, participants from marginalized groups developed empathy for the challenges faced by other marginalized groups who have different kinds of disabilities or vulnerabilities. And also, unlike traditional single event consultation, the project's staged engagement model facilitated the genuine co-creation of policy recommendations. And when the country's third and 5-year plan was launched, it was really heartening for me to see that we aim for a more comprehensive social protection system by 2034, especially for the vulnerable groups. And I'll end my presentation here, and happy to answer any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chencho, for that very interesting gist of the report that the evaluation came out with. This is very impressive that the effort did prove positive for the hypothesis. Before I invite our next speaker, I think often when we are inside in the area where things are developing, we often tend to have a more flatter view of things. And I think it helps to have a bird's eye view of what's happening in the area. So in that context, I think Karma Dukchen, who is a Bhutanese and speaking from Berlin today, is a ESG specialist. He is an engineer by training, and he focuses on sustainability in structures. So welcome to the discussions. Karma, can I now invite you to share your statement?
Thank you, Dashu. First of all, as Dr. Chencho Lhamu mentioned, I'd just like to say it's such an honor to be sharing a platform with such seasoned individuals like yourselves. As someone who's quite young, as not as experienced, I'd just like to keep my opening statements quite short and simple. And in line with what Dr. Karma, what I just mentioned about democracy being respectful, truthful, and open, I'd just like to also speak from the heart and keep it very open and honest. I think for the past 7 years, I've been living in Germany. And when democracy first started in the country, I was still quite a young person. And I think for a lot of young people like us, we just did not grasp the idea about our impact in like the nation building in terms of democracy. But having lived and experiencing democracy and how the political climates here affect different classes of people and how your voices can directly impact and influence decision making, it has really kind of intrigued a certain kind of interest in me. And also not to mention about my work in sustainability here. It's just been quite an interesting observation looking at how there's a lot of interest from European markets and governments about their sustainability efforts, and then how our Bhutan and our country is doing in terms of making sure that we are developing in a very sustainable manner. So yeah, it's quite an interesting aspect for me to experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Karma. Karma, maybe just hello. Okay, just to maybe reverse the the flow and start with begin with you and then go back up to the first speaker. So we've heard a lot of we've just had concluded one of the biggest international events in our country's history, the Bhutan Innovation Forum, and there was a lot of influential thinkers from around the globe in the country to discuss what's happening around the world and what it could mean for Bhutan, the potential. So I just wanted to ask you maybe what do you see in terms of leveraging technology for citizen engagement and deepening democracy in the country?
From my point of view, I think there is a lot of potential, but I think what is really important is to be to be honest and critical. I think a lot of the times Bhutanese people us as a society and community are not critical enough, I'd say. For example, whenever there's a new idea being presented, we are not critical enough of, okay, is that idea localized enough? Is that idea dynamic enough? Have we considered all the pros and the cons? I think that is a very important factor from my personal from my perspective. I'd say we need to be critical enough of anything and everything. And until and unless we are not critical enough, we are not opening balanced dialogues and discussions. And when we are not opening balanced dialogues and discussions, then I feel like we're not exploring solutions that are long-term, solutions that are robust, and solutions that are dynamic. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. So you talked about being critical, being open about your feedback, right? So
yes.
Can I ask Dr. Chencho to jump in and share your thoughts about, because you've had many years of dealing with our young people, making them understand how the governance system functions in our country, digital literacy, citizen engagement, civic engagement. So what are your perspectives on that? How can we make people more critical? How can we make our discussions more honest and meaningful?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I would just like to extend on what Karma responded to your earlier question on leveraging technology for civic engagement, innovation in Bhutan. No doubt, social media is very popular amongst young people. But also, if you analyze the kind of and quality of discussion that is happening on social media, I think there is a lot, much that remains to be desired. Many are times when there is a post on social media, I see knee-jerk responses rather than well thought through responses and constructive engagement of discourses. So I think on the whole, we still need to do a lot of media literacy for people and to model how quality and constructive discourses needs to happen on social media for it to be productive and useful and meaningful for our lawmakers and policymakers. I think that there's a lot that needs to be done. With regard to, and also if you look at the profile of the people engaging on social media on topical issues, you can quite easily make out that these kind of people who engage are from the young lot, and knee-jerk responses come from them because they don't have the depth and the breadth of understanding of the issues in the country. And I think it is partly, our education system that confines learning to four walls of the classroom instead of engaging young people to, have discourses on current issues in the country. So I think critical thinking needs to precede with a good understanding of issues. I'm not saying that our young people don't have the ability to think critically. They do have. But I think to think critically, first one needs to educate oneself on those issues in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. It's interesting you mentioned, especially connecting what you said about what they say is partly because of the education system. And at the beginning of the webinar, I remember Honorable Tsering had mentioned that she had just come in from an education committee meeting. So I would like to pose this question to perhaps Honorable Tsering. First, in terms of the engagement on the digital platforms, how receptive is Parliament about feedback and comments from citizens on social media? And secondly, how would you say the education system could direct its objectives to address the concerns that Dr. Chencho raised about how its inadequacy is actually leading to our young people, at least many of the comments being knee-jerk reaction rather than being substantive and substantiated.
Thank you so much, Tishu. In regard to the parliamentarians on how receptive are we for the various comments and the feedback that we receive from the social media, I should say that we are very, very positive for it. For any kinds of feedback and the comments that is being given to any of either to the institution or to any members of the parliament. Why? Because we know for sure that even if the person writes in its anonymous face, yet must have done at least a certain form of research, a certain form of, a kind of history on what the person has done before having, commented on anyone. So, but then at the same time, what we got to do is we have to also look at the authenticity of the comment, the feedback, or any kind of information that is being written on the social media. So this is one thing that is seriously being, taken care, that is being noted by the members of the parliament, while at the same time we do respect the comments and the feedbacks being written in the social media besides the mainstream media. And now, when it comes to the directives from the Ministry of Education on inadequacy and all the subjects that you have raised, I am so pleased to inform here that the Ministry of Education and Skills Development, with a good sum of budget that they have received from the 13th five-year plan, they are giving, more importance towards the media literacy, towards the ICTization of the curriculum. So that is, what we were actually being informed by the Honorable Minister for the Ministry of Education when she attended the consultation meeting with the Special Committee for Education. So with this, with the importance being given by Her Excellency, and with so much of plans and programs that has been already developed by the Ministry of Education, we are very hopeful that all of these would be very well taken care. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tasho. It's very good news that there are a lot of many activities happening with the Ministry of Education, and that the special committee is reviewing the educational reforms. Maybe ask Kinle. I think in as much as the schools help our children have the fundamentals of critical thinking, I think empowering them, or the behavior to seeking information remains an important character before one can make substantiate comments or feedback, as Dr. Chencho had earlier mentioned in a statement, and the Honorable Sitting had mentioned it too. So I was wondering, in terms of from Bhutanese media, how is the scenario there? Is it able to inform the citizens as much as it should? Does it face challenges, or what kind of progress has it made so far?
The media landscape in Bhutan, I think, has dramatically changed over the years. I would say, the golden years of media was, from 2006 to 2010, where media was thriving. Media was very strong. After that, I think the media scenario has weakened. A lot of newspapers, because of several factors, multiple factors, the market being one, the small market being one, of course, then there's cutthroat competition. So all this, I think, led to the closure of several media houses, including many vernacular Zonka newspapers, which I think served very important roles in not just disseminating information, but also, I think, promoting our language and culture. So many of them had to close shop due to economic factors, poor financial health. So when the media weakens, I think the consequences are there for us to see. In terms of coverage, very so again in bringing in the topic here, civic engagement, from across the country again, our media, the current media landscape, is very much focused on urban, centers. Except for BBS and Kunsel, I think other private newspapers, they do not have bureau correspondents, bureau offices in other regions in the country. That would mean there is no representation, of voices of people from the region, the rural areas. Even Kunsel, they have only three. We have only three bureau offices right now. BBS, and I just checked, they have 9 bureau offices in other parts of the country. So that, I think, limits the representation of people's voices. And the structure, again, the economic model, the business model of the current media houses that are solely dependent on 80% of ad revenue from government, I think is also not favoring the growth of a vibrant media industry in the country. So as of now, I think that way, I think again, that's when the social media, I think, has fully taken over. And then the mainstream media catching up, playing catch up, and trying to verify information, trying to say this is fake news, this is disinformation, this is misinformation. So our role now, in compared to when the mainstream and then the social media, I think when you compare this, so our role, mainstream media's role, I think, has now, of course, it's just one of the main rules, is to verify, rectify information, wrong information that is shared, in the social media.
Yes, thank you, Kile. As with the plan, we would have come to the end of the panel discussions, and if there were questions from the audiences, this is where I would have read out and shared with the panelists here. But I think it's also a good chance to perhaps maybe delve a little deeper on your statements. If there's anybody who would like to share anything, otherwise I have a few questions that I could follow up the panelists with. But also, I think maybe perhaps before anybody else speaks, we know that in the Parliament, it was in the news that the Parliament has signed a memorandum of understanding, an agreement, if you may, with the civil society organizations to deepen engagement in terms of informing legislation in Parliament. A few days later, there was another announcement about agreement being signed between MSMEs, small businesses, and the Parliament about engaging with the private sector. These initiatives also appears to also give the impression that there is a desire from Parliament and from the government to engage and enrich engagement in terms of informed legislation policy making. Anybody would like to share any perspectives on that?
Just to add, Dr. Sange, just to add, I think on top of that, I think there is also an ongoing exercise happening between the CSO sector and the media. I think the CSO media engagement framework, I think, is being developed, which I think is a timely intervention development that will definitely promote CSO and media interaction and also provide more visibility to what CSOs, civil society, are doing in the country, and also amplify their voices. Just an additional information.
Dr. Chencho, did you want to come in?
Yeah. Yes, I just wanted to react to what Dr. Wolf mentioned about CSOs in Bhutan versus CSOs in Germany. And he also made a reference to the recent development, which is the need to develop endowment fund for CSOs. And I think it's 3 million in 4 years for public benefit organizations and 1.5 million in 3 years for mutually beneficial organizations. And I think this is not the case in other democracies, and Bhutan is unique in that way. But I think such a decision also reflects the uniqueness of the country and, to a large extent, our own economic status. As Dr. Wolf mentioned, to be a member of the board of a CSO in mature democracies, you have to pay a membership fee. And you also, become a donor for those, organizations. Whereas in Bhutan, I think, of course, on the board of the CSOs, members are not paid. It is entirely voluntary. But the need for an endowment, I would like to present both perspectives here. The need for an endowment from a regulator's perspective is to ensure that CSOs are sustainable and that CSOs don't struggle even in their operating cost, and that CSOs don't resort to unethical means. And I think the intention is to ensure that CSOs in Bhutan are intentional. But on the flip side, such a requirement can also deter any interested individual to start a CSO in the country. So that is the deterring factor there. But in Bhutan, unlike in other countries, I think the culture of giving to religious organizations and religious activities is much more vibrant than giving to a civil society that works in the governance area. So I think such a decision says a lot about the economic status of the country, and Yeah, I just thought I'll, make a mention of this since Dr. Wolf already made a reference to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chencho. I think when you talk about how giving culture in Bhutan civil society, as Tasha Ura actually framed it as, informal, not registered, but it's always been there. It's interesting to share, especially our friends from Germany, for our friends in Germany, is that whenever somebody is sick or there is a medical emergency, and when somebody doesn't have the economic means to seek treatment outside of the country where the services are not available in the country, to sometimes because it's emergency, but also because some of the costs may not be covered by the Ministry of Health. In such situations, we've all seen, Kile, Dr. Chencho, you'll agree with me, within a day or two, people raise about 4 million, 5 million. And it just goes to show that, it's a certain kind of concerns that the Bhutanese are more, I suppose, inclined to support, and not necessarily, and that this is despite the requirement to have approval from the Department of Law and Order. So the department does give clearances. This is to ensure that there are no fake, fraud or forgery where people get conned and get ripped from the money. So this is just to make the point that there are Bhutanese who they share a giving culture. But I think one interesting issue that Kili actually left us with was, we have the social media, we have the mainstream media for the literate. But when you talk about civic engagement, civic space, we also know there's a significant population of our country in the rural parts of the country. That's where a lot of our culture is still very vibrant, community vitality is still very strong. Maybe if we discuss a little bit about that.
Dashu?
Yes, please, Honorable Singh.
Yes, Dashu. I would just like to share on what the National Council in particular is doing in regard to our concern that we have on the state of media. So I should say here that the Parliament and in particular the National Council, the Review House, is seriously concerned about the state of media, especially in Bhutan. So for that, one of the committees in the council, that is the Social and Cultural Affairs Committee, has already taken up the task to review on the state of media in Bhutan, and they are ready with the findings, with the observations, and as well the recommendations to be submitted to the government for their approval. And the reason why the National Council is so concerned on this very subject, as shared by Mr. Kille, is we are equally worried about the representation of the voices of the people, especially from all the regions of the nation. And at the same time, we are also so concerned about, fulfilling to have this informed public to understand the policies, the laws, and the government action. And the other thing, we know it's very important for us, for everyone, to have this accountability and the transparency being answered to, being fulfilled at all ends. So with these aspects, very soon in the upcoming session, the National Council will be submitting its recommendation to the government. And with this, we hope that we will be able to address, some of the pertinent concerns being raised by the media houses, be it the mainstream as well as the social media.
Thank you, Dr. Sri. And I must elaborate a little further in what the National Council in the last few months have been doing. Is one of them has been the reviewing a policy on Bhutanese people living with disabilities and inclusion into development policies of the country. So that was also another important, I thought, progress that Bhutan has made. But Dr. I was wondering if you could also share. I also understand that the Parliament of Bhutan, in its interest or its objective to make legislation more transparent, accountable, and inclusive, civic engagement being the focus of the discussion today, there has been a development in terms of preparing and planning to conduct public hearings to inform legislation and policy decisions. Would you like to share anything on that?
Yes, sure. What you have mentioned here is correct, and we do also know that Dr. Sange and some of your colleagues do closely work with the parliamentarians, both with the National Assembly members as well as with the National Council. And yes, we know that public hearing is one of the most important instrument that is to be
Sorry, Dr. Singh, I don't know if you're muted. Hello, Dr. Singh, you're muted. I'm sorry, there seems to be something wrong with on Dr. Singh's end. We're not able to hear. I hope that others can hear me and see me. Okay, our connection is off. Sorry about that. We have a question from one of our audiences, and I invite anybody who would like to contribute to it. The question is, Bhutan being a democratic role model in the region and beyond, how could it positively affect positive developments in other countries? Can you all hear me?
Yes,
can you hear
yes,
me?
I can. At least I can hear you.
Yes.
Anybody would like to comment? Would you like me to read the question? It's there in the chat box.
Yeah, so if there isn't anybody, I can give it a go. How can Bhutan affect positive development in other countries? I think the only one of the biggest assets that Bhutan has is development philosophy, which is gross national happiness, and it really syncs well with the idea of sustainable development. And I think that is Bhutan's gift to the world. But when there's a conflict between sustainable development and the bread and butter, that is where the tension is. And how do we strike that balance is the most difficult decision. And I think each country would adopt a different strategy to strike that balance. I think Bhutan, despite having this philosophy as a guide for all our development in the country, we still do struggle. But it is really heartening that we are now thinking of taking GNH at another level with the Galifo Mindfulness City. It would be an embodiment of GNH at the scale of a whole city, to illustrate how GNH can be integrated into the infrastructural design and other governance and policies and so on. Of course, these are ideas, and we are yet to see the fruits of it, but at least we are making a beginning towards it. Thank you.
Karmadev Chen, I'm sorry if you're back to for a while. So
Yeah,
just wanted
I actually wanted to also add something very interesting there. I think what we can showcase to the rest of the world, and especially within the region, is our commitment to development does not come at the cost of our own values. A very good example that I have, a discussion that I have with a lot of my peers here is, for example, the tourism industry in the country. It is the backbone of our country, but at the same time, the question that I get framed a lot of the times is, but why not open it? Why not open it? And I always have to tell them, it is a backbone of our economy, but at the same time, we've seen what mass tourism has done to other countries. We can look at Indonesia, we can look at Thailand, we can look at Nepal. It has, even though opening it directly might bring a lot of positive, let's say positive economic growth, but the negative aspects of mass tourism far outweighs any kind of economic growth that it might bring in. So I think that is, and also another aspect to add there is, for example, having bring in mass tourism sometimes might also affect a lot of our small marginalized communities. It is very evident from if you look at Bali, for example, with a lot of the mass tourism with yoga retreats happening, a lot of the local people and the local businesses have not been able to grow. But at the same time, what has been growing is a lot of foreign investments that do not actually give into the local microeconomy. So I think the fact that we are still committed to growing holistically and developing holistically altogether, not leaving anyone behind, is, I think, something that we can really showcase to the rest of the world and especially within the region.
So Karma, before I move to the next speaker, this is probably going to be the last round. So any parting words that you want to leave the panel with?
Any kind of parting words that I would like to leave with is, I think we're at the pressing point of very important drastic changes that are happening in the country. I think, especially for me at my age, I feel like I am becoming more and more interested in democracy, especially with the rise in, let's say, the political climate all around the world, right? We're getting more invested in the US politics, we're getting more invested in the European politics. But at the same time, I feel like we as young people are not as involved or invested in the Bhutanese politics. That might come because of a fact that we do not, because of our culture as well, where we are not really taught to be objective, number one, objective enough, and number second, to be critical enough, right? To ask the right kind of questions, because that's seen as being a little bit disrespectful. But at the same time, I think there are ways of, I think, engaging in a respectful, critical, and objective manner. And I think a lot of us need to start engaging a little bit more. That's what I'd like to leave with.
Thanks so much, Karma. Kile, maybe concluding statement.
I think good governance is fundamental, for the success of a democracy. And civic engagement is, again, foundational, to good governance. So I think there is a cyclical, relationship, between good governance, then civic engagement, which helps shape public policies, legislations, and all, at the highest level through engagement of grassroots community, local government, and groups and associations and civil society. And in this cyclical relationship, I see the role of mainstream media as very instrumental again, and towards that end, I think looking at our current media landscape, the scenario, how weakened, our media has become, So in that context, I think, yes, the National Council has done, its part, they've reviewed, the media sector, this time, and they're going to present, the current, the upcoming, the session, and we look forward to, the recommendations and follow through, through concrete, government, interventions. So I think the basic, my point is here that, we need to understand, reinforce, how important the mainstream media is, in the context of also, how an uncontrolled social media. And for that, again, we need to focus on social media literacy programs, and starting from, I think, preschools, combined with, again, going back to our culture, our values, So I think that's where we have to start.
Thank you, Kile. Thanks so much.
Can I comment?
Doctor, yeah, sure. Dr. Chencho, please.
Yeah, I forgot to mention earlier on when I spoke about the endowment fund for CSOs. Personally, I think that it should be made. It should be kept voluntary. It shouldn't be made mandatory. When you impose an endowment fund on CSOs, it comes from this belief that CSOs should be permanent entities like a government entity. But CSOs, by nature of their work, will emerge when there is a need, and it will cease to exist when that need is fulfilled. So by that logic, there is no magic number to CSOs. How many CSOs do we need in Bhutan? Nobody would know. It would depend on the need of the hour. So there is no magic number to that. I would like to end with this, that for young people and women to be interested in politics, the interest in politics is shaped not only by how politics pan out in Bhutan, thanks to social media and internet, how young people and women, the entire population, view politics, is shaped by how politics is played globally. So when the global politics become abrasive, and it's when young people tend to lose faith in politics and tend to disengage. And same goes for the woman folk. By nature, we are more docile. We don't like confrontation. So I think that is when many women step back and do not engage in politics. But I really admire those women who have the courage to come forward and run for office. So kudos to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karma. Thank you so much for Kile, Dr. Chencho, and all volunteering for this very engaging session. Sorry, I couldn't manage time properly. We had some, issues there. So my apologies there. I would like to also thank Dr. Karma Ura, Dr. Wolf, Dr. Klein, FNF, and Tashi for all the work that's gone behind this. And I think especially Tashi for having worked hard to make this happen. Thank you for the opportunity. And over to you, Tashi. Thank you so much.
Yeah, as you said, thank you very, very much for this extremely fruitful discussion. Dear Tasho Kama Ura, Moritz Körner, and President Wolf, and of course Sangai Kandu, Honorable Tsering Shomo, Kinley Tsering from the media, Dr. Lhamu, and Mr. Dubchen. Thank you very much again for this extremely relevant discussion on democracy in Bhutan. It's not on me to sum up, but allow me one or two small little remarks. Number one, I really feel, and we see that also in many indicators, that Bhutan is a very positive role model for democratic movement in South Asia and beyond. And let me say that here also from our South Asia office, there are other countries where the democratic development in the region might be like this, or perhaps like this. In your country, in Bhutan, the curve of learning, of political reforms, of openness, of transparency, pursuing democratic and liberal values, I would say, is extremely steep. We see that when we as a foundation, a humble parliamentarian foundation from Germany, pursue activities on the fields of geopolitics. Here, Bhutan is extremely relevant. It's playing an extremely positive role in international diplomacy. But when we pursue activities in the field, for example, of human rights, like LGBTIQ rights, rights of people with disabilities, then Bhutan, again, is a very positive model for a positive development in the region. Because there is, of course, the king, there is the democratic and the parliamentarian willingness to support. There are successful entrepreneurs supporting, and there is a very vivid civic society supporting these elements and facets which foster the democracies in the region. So let me again say, we as Friedrich-Naumann Foundation are happy to follow up, to also pursue our activities in the region. Let me allow to specifically mention our dear partner from Bhutan Media Foundation, Mr. Kinley, you and other journalists. It's always great to be and see the platform of Thimphu Press Club in your capital, where also many people from other sectors of society meet, where you invite also international guests, and where Bhutan Media Foundation, together with many other social entrepreneurs with social developments, foster democracy in the country and beyond. So we as Friedrich-Naumann Foundation will continue with that. Let me again say thank you especially to our country office in Hesse, Mr. Walz and Mrs. Els. We are transmitting to our dear friends and well-wishers in Germany. Thank you again, Mr. Wolf, for your valuable contributions from the German Himalaya Gesellschaft. Thanks to Bhutan Media Foundation again. Distinguished panelists, let me just invite all our people from perhaps outside Bhutan who are participating in this discussion. Come to Bhutan, experience the country, and see how vivid the positive democratic development in the country is, beyond many other very positive aspects. Follow us, Friedrich-Naumann Foundation, on social media. We will have a series of democratic motivated webinars in the very near future. So thank you very much again to our team, especially Tashi, and the dear friends and colleagues. I wish you a very good day to Bhutan, to South Asia, India, and abroad. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. That was really a very good discussion, and we hope that in the next encounters here in South Asia, where we always invite good colleagues and friends from Bhutan, and that we also are going to see each other then in the upcoming events in Bhutan or here in South Asia. Again, thank you very much to the honorable members of parliament and all you others. I would be very happy to see you in person if we haven't had the opportunity so far. Yeah, and thanks again for this very impactful discussion. I wish you now a very good day, and whenever you have got interesting and good ideas regarding upcoming webinars, seminars on the region, please do not hesitate to share that with us. That will be a very significant contribution to our work. Thank you, and all the best to Bhutan.
Thank you.